Hi everybody, welcome to Plant Liker episode 5.
Oh, here's another day where I appreciate plant life. Fuck you, I love plants.
Well, I'm in Oslo, Norway. I'm here for the Oslo Poesi Film Festival. It's a poetry film festival. Very rare. And I got invited last year and they liked my thing a lot, my presentations, my everything, and so they have invited me back. They give me free flight here, which is great, and a hotel room as well, which feels very luxurious to me. And I'm in the hotel room now recording this for you. And I'm going to Sweden and Germany and the UK after this. I'm still a little nervous for this tour. I always get nervous with international traveling, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to just do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to go out there and win the championship. Speaking of championships, I lost the Super Bowl competition that I started. Last episode, I said I didn't know the Super Bowl teams yet, and I'm going to try to not find out who's playing in the Super Bowl. Well, I lost. Last night, I saw on Twitter who the other team is, and so now I know both of the teams in the Super Bowl. Wah, wah, wah. Well, that's my loss. I wasn't good enough to win. I didn't give it my all, you guys. I didn't isolate myself from the internet strongly enough to win. If I wanted it bad enough, I probably could have got it, but I didn't commit myself enough, and now I know who's in the Super Bowl. So, all power to the people who still don't know. If you still don't know who's in the Super Bowl, that's very good for you. Congratulations, and I believe in you. You can do it. Let me know how long you succeed. Another thing I want to mention quickly is that I'm going to try to be better at speaking in such a way on these podcasts and other places, like at my live performances and stuff, where I don't use these filler words like like. And for me, I think one that I use maybe even more than those is, you know. I say you know a lot. Anyway, it's something that I've noticed from a few different sources. I was doing this presentation in Alaska in December because I went there to finish off my 50 states. And Alaska, this woman in the audience said that it sticks out to her because she's aware of it. And she said my confidence is great and my content was great, but these filler words just really stuck out to her as something that I could improve on. And I don't know that it makes a big difference to that many people, but I've been thinking about it since then, and I have noticed some people who speak, who don't use those words as much, they just have these pauses in there, and I feel like the pauses, when, not filling those pauses with these filler words to fill space, I really like the effect that it has, I think, usually. It feels good, usually. And so, I'm going to try that. And so, if anybody wants to help me with this, and this will probably also make you more aware of your own speaking as well, if that's something you care about, but if some of you want to count how many times I say these different filler words in the episodes, that could be helpful for me, just so that I have this count and I know that people are counting and I know that it's going to impact, because this woman told me that she goes to Toastmasters, and at Toastmasters there's somebody who, and I don't know much about Toastmasters, by the way, I'm not endorsing it, I've never been to one, I don't even know anything about it, but she said that there's somebody who counts how many times everybody says and like, and so she she told me that it has an effect just knowing that somebody's counting and keeping track. So if anybody wants to do that for me on these episodes, that would be awesome. Just tweet me or Facebook message me or text me or whatever. Send me saying how many times I've said those words. All right. Well, this episode might be a piece of crap. We don't know yet. We're still getting into it. This episode might turn out horrible, though, because I've got some really good questions on this episode, but then I don't know if I have totally great answers, right? Isn't that interesting how that works? The questions are so good that I'm just like, basically my response is, good question. But I want to share them anyway. So here we go. I'll jump into them. Actually, this first one is, well, no, I'll start with one of the harder ones so that I can do an easier one in between and then do a harder one again. So this first one said, it's a longer question too. Recently, I stayed with family for the holidays in Florida. The past few times I have stayed, I have found it very difficult to go through daily life with them because our feelings and perspectives about the world are sometimes so different that at some points I feel so distant from them it is painful. Not just because I am vegan and they very much are not, but things like disjointed discussions about racism and privilege revealing an even greater distance between us. I even feel afraid to wear shorts around them because I am a non-normative female person and it's really hot in Florida, so that's a problem. I think I am wondering what your relationships with your family members, maybe specifically your parents, are like, and how they have changed, if they have, over the recent years. Like, have they always been supportive of you, or what do they think about the things you are pursuing? So that's a great question. That question, I think, reflects very relatable concerns of people who are learning and trying to do good things and important things. And so I'm glad that my people listening to this are the type of people who would have that kind of question. And I have to say that my personal experiences with my family have not been such that I will have amazing tips for you, because I have not lived through the worst when it comes to family not being accepting of me. My brother, Joe, as I've said in the previous podcast, went vegan with me, so I've always had a vegan brother that I'm close to, and we also share lots of discussions about trying to learn a lot more about feminism and anti-racism and solidarity with many different oppressed groups and different critical, philosophical, social justice, politics, ideas. We have lots of conversations about that stuff. And so I've got my one brother for that. And the rest of my family, my other brother and my parents, they are not as on the same page about those things, or like we don't talk about those things as much, but they're also not the worst. You know, they're not the worst people about those things. They're generally very nice people and respectful and like will learn something if I try to tell them about something. So what can I say to you? What will be helpful to you? I don't know if I can even give you that much. I know that with my parents being supportive of me and the things I am pursuing, since that was something you said, my experience has been that my mom was the one who was more resistant to me doing the career that I wanted, like going into an arts career. And she was always encouraging me to do something a little bit more practical or usual for a career, like something like accounting or farming are the two that I remember her encouraging me toward, I feel like. Especially farming in the later years, maybe because she has some land. My mom has land, and she's like, learn how to do organic farming and farm on my land. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it's, I mean, maybe it should be. Maybe it should be something that I invest a ton of my life into, but I didn't feel convinced that it's necessarily my gift, my unique gift to the world, so I felt like maybe I don't want to do that. But maybe I should, who knows. But anyway, I decided to pursue, at least for now, this art career, this poetry career, which is very impractical by most people's consideration because not many people can make money doing that. But I was very confident that I could find a way, or I was very determined anyway that I would. And it seemed like once I started having a little more success with it, like my mom would discourage me from it early on, and was always like trying to get me to switch over to some more conventional career. But once I started getting a few like external markers of success in my chosen field, then she sort of just gave up on that. She sort of accepted that, you know what, actually he's pretty good at what he's trying to do. He works very hard at it, so I'll let him do that. So when I got profiled by the New York Times Style magazine, T magazine, in September 2012, that was already like a year or two after I had been working hard to build a following for my work. But that was really where she was like, oh, wow, she goes to the store and buys the Sunday version of the New York Times and can tell the clerk, oh, my son is in this, and feels pride about it. And then I also, when I got booked, like a year later, I started getting booked at some universities, and those places actually pay well to do a performance, a reading of my work. They actually pay quite a lot sometimes. And so she was like, okay, he's actually succeeding at this. So I think then she stopped really bothering me about it and just sort of accepted, like, that's what I'm going to do. But it sort of was just like, we had a lot of those conversations and a lot of those not really intense arguments, but kind of arguments, and then I just was persistent enough that she learned that I was just going to be persistent and then stopped bothering me about it. But I don't know. Wish I had more specific, better feedback for you. But anyway, thank you for listening, and thank you for caring, and thank you for thinking that I would have something valuable to say about that. The next thing I want to get into is this question. Somebody asked me, what are your fave things to have a think about? My favorite things to think about. And I think for me, it is many different subjects relating to the context of the world that is so wild and so amazing and so unbelievable. The other day I was outside in Tucson staring at the stars, because the stars are pretty visible in Tucson because they keep the light pollution low, because they have these space observatories in town or nearby, and they cut down the light pollution. A lot of streets in Tucson are dark at night. It's hard to see the road even because it's so dark, but that allows us to see the stars even in the city pretty well. So that's kind of neat. But I was staring at the stars and just thinking about the context of the world and how all of them are suns and how everything has happened. Earth, being formed as this spherical object. And I was thinking specifically about this. I was thinking think about how long the Earth had to exist as a stable environment. How long the Earth had to just be consistent with, day and night and seasons and the climate and the presence of water and sunlight, all these different components. How long the Earth had to be stable and consistent in order for life to develop and then become so complex. The life form that we are seems very complex. And how long it took for something like us to be formed. Even the other forms of animals. Amazing how long it takes for that type of thing to naturally congeal and evolve. And the Earth had to be so consistent for so long in order for that to happen. And I don't mean 100% consistent, like there was no climate change, but you know what I'm saying? There was enough of a consistent environment for life to evolve. And to think that something so consistent and stable could exist in a universe where it's like these balls of rock revolving around a flaming sun, it just feels like way unlikely, like impossible. How's that going to happen? How's there going to be these giant rocks and balls of gas floating through space, and they catch each other in an orbit, which is wild to even think about. I need to learn more about physics. I know it has to do with gravity and all that, but it seems wild that there's revolving just by gravity. Anyway, though, it's wild that in this chaos of a universe, something that consistent and stable could also exist that allows life to form and evolve to become that complex. I was just thinking about the impossibility, basically, of life and of human life, And then I was just like staring at my own hands, and I was thinking about how incredible it is, how weird it is, and unlikely it is that I have or am, depending on how you look at it, this incredibly complex body, which has millions and billions of things in it. Like I said in my one video, I said that I have 500 million air sacs in my lungs, but then there's also 10 billion B cells or something. There's 10 billion different variations on B cells, the antibodies on B cells. And so I think there's much more than that in the body. I think there's trillions of cells in your body. There's a lot of very tiny things happening, very amazing things. Did you know that there are neurons in your body that are like a meter long? I didn't know that until recently. Because cells, they're individual cells that are a meter long or something. I need to still learn more about this, so I may be saying something pretty ignorant, I don't know, but can you believe that? That seems messed up because cells are extremely small, right? Like you can't even see them, they're so small, but then they're a meter long. That's just so wacky to me. I couldn't believe it. Those are some things that I love to think about, but get this. That's not even my number one top think. Here's my top think. Just thinking about the fact that I will actually die. And that might be kind of wacky to say that that's my favorite thing to think about, but it's very real to me. And to think specifically about my consciousness ending, the voice inside my head, which I almost picture as another person, because I'm always talking to myself in my head. I'm always planning things. I'm always reassuring myself. I'm always working through anxiety. I'm so invested in the world, invested in my identity, who I am, my future, my past, my ego, I'm so invested. And with this little pal in my head, this little voice in my head, we are invested in the world so much. Sometimes I feel like I'm even trying to quiet that down a little bit with meditation or some other form of just being directly in the present moment and not thinking so much, because I do it a lot. I think maybe too much sometimes, but it's also kind of amazing that I think so much, and I've been on this journey through life for so long with this buddy in my head, and we're always worried about everything and stressed out and all this stuff. It's not all good. I'm not saying it's such amazingness, but it's the type of thing like, wow, if I just get hit by a bus and die, that's just going to end. That's just not going to be there anymore. And it's not like I'll be dead and thinking to myself, oh man, I wish I was still alive, or I miss this and that and that. No, there won't be a me. There won't be an I to think or talk or reflect. It won't be. It's too confusing to think about. And I know that even though I try to think about it, I can't even predict what it would be like, because I can't conceive. I was trying to think about what was before the universe, if anything. Because the Big Bang started the universe, and I was trying to learn, supposedly, and I was trying to learn, well, what was before that, if anything? Was there time before that? Is there time outside of the universe? Because there's space-time. The universe is made of space-time, and when you know how they're connected? Some of you know more about this than others, and some of you know more about this than me, and I need you to send me links. I need to learn about this. I need to learn more about theories of what there was, or even if it makes sense to say before the Big Bang. Does it make sense to say before the Big Bang? Did time exist when the universe doesn't exist? These are very big questions that I don't think it's really my specialty to think about these things. I get too confused. I'm not the best at thinking through these types of things. I'm more focused on like, okay, how can I feel better today? And I'm just maybe a little better at spreading positive energy to people. trying to help people feel better since they are here, trying to help people think through what to do since they are here, or anyway, something like that, trying to make people laugh or something. That's maybe what I'm a little better at than thinking through these issues about time and shit. Anyway, I'm interested in it though because it could be very consequential. So, all right. Anyway, those are some of my favorite things to have to think about. Realizing that I will die, and that even think about this. Even though life is 80 years long or 100 years long or 120 or however long it's going to be for you or me, the fact that it's going to end at all feels like it's not long enough. You know what I'm saying? It's the fact that it will end almost makes it irrelevant how long it is. Because the perception of time moving is so subjective anyway. People say, sometimes time flies and sometimes it goes slowly, and it depends on lots of different factors. But just the fact that people say, like, wow, time flew, now I'm 70 years old. And it's like, wow, you know what? I'm not 70 yet, but when I get to be 70, I'm probably going to say the same thing. And soon my life is going to be over. My life is going to be over soon. It might be 60 years from now, but that's still soon. The fact that it's going to end at all. Maybe this doesn't make sense. Am I on some really fricked up level right now? That I sound like I'm high as fuck or something? Whatever. Life will end. And that messes with me, but usually it messes with me in a good way. It messes with me in such a way that then I appreciate the world and I really cherish moments. So that's something that I love to have a think about. Here's another great question that I got recently. Y'all ready for this? Gotta pull it up online. Long question. Here we go. One of my favorite videos of yours, and your most popular one, Make Something Beautiful Before You Are Dead, really inspires me. But it brings to mind something that I've been trying to unpack for a while, and maybe you can address this on your podcast if you feel like it is worth exploring. I have friends who are college graduates, some are college dropouts, some never went to college, and some are thinking about going back. No matter which category they may fall into, many of my friends, and myself, get hung up on this idea that our lives are only valuable if we are, quote, doing something. Usually this evokes the notion of some capitalistic endeavor. So many feel like if they aren't doing something that makes money or doesn't make a lot of money or provides some other societal reward like power, respect, or prestige, then their life does not have value and won't until they are on the path to acquiring these things. In your videos and poetry, you speak a lot about carpe diem, YOLO, etc. And I know you are not necessarily speaking about pursuing material or capitalist goals, and I believe what you are saying is very positive and moves people to action. I've also noticed how you are being more intentional about using your platform and voice to bring light to lots of different social issues, and it's so awesome to see you continue to find new ways to boost other folks. But do you think it's possible to live a full, just, carpe diem life without making or doing anything? If I never make or do anything before I'm dead, in your philosophy, what does that say about my life? I'm asking because I'm often encouraging my friends to pursue their gifts and explore their interests, especially if they are passionate about matters that may be helpful to other people, other animals, and or the earth. And sometimes I feel like that's another way of saying they have to earn their right to be alive, and that they may be wasting their lives if they don't do. I hope this makes some sense, but I'm just trying to unpack the idea that it is possible to encourage others to do stuff without the subtextual message that if they don't, then their life somehow has less meaning. Thanks for reading this, Steve. Be well. So, once again, great question. I just want to take a moment to say that. I have this poem in my book that I put out last summer, my book, Live My Life. The poem goes as follows. Attention, people who don't think you are doing enough to help others. You are beautiful for having that fear. You are my kind of person, and I love you. So it's just that short little poem. It was actually something that I originally tweeted, and it means a lot to me because of that middle line, you are beautiful for having that fear. It's sort of acknowledging that basically it's just sort of like me saying, well, good question. And your question reflects really important, really valid concerns. And so I'm just so grateful that people who come up with this quality of question care what I have anything to say about, and would think that I could help them with this. I'm glad that these are the type of people who are listening to my podcast and following me. And anyway, thank you so much for your attention, and I will try to honor it the best I can. Now, this subject, though, is something I've not thought about much before this, so my answer may not be amazing, and so I'm not going to try to give you a total, conclusive, 100% solid answer, but I will try to speak to some things that it brought to mind. And overall, I'm just saying, great question, and I hope you continue to think about this, and I thank you for inviting me and others now to think about it as well. One thing that I thought of is this part in your question where you ask basically like, is it possible to live a full carpe diem life without doing anything? That to me, I'm a little confused what that actually looks like, what that actually means. You mentioned that doing something often gets interpreted in this very material way of making money or doing something that earns lots of power and prestige. And so you're already being a little bit critical about what it means to quote-unquote do something. But this part of your question where you ask, is it possible to live a carpe diem life without doing anything? I'm like, well, what does that look like? Is there anybody who doesn't do anything? What does that mean specifically? Because, everybody does something, right? And, of course, there might be different levels or different amounts. There's just certainly different types of doing things. And some of them are more acknowledged by society, definitely more acknowledged by your parents or other places. But most of us are doing something and doing some good stuff, right? And I think definitely I encourage you to keep being critical of how that's defined, how doing something is defined. And a lot of it is because of capitalism, I think, and money and how people value those things. But also even other things like emotional labor and friendship, for example. Friendship is such a valuable thing to offer someone. To be nice to somebody, to hug somebody or listen to them or do some favor for them. Even just smiling at a stranger sometimes could be really valuable to that person, or talking to the clerk at the store for a minute. All these little things that you could do could have value, and it's really hard to evaluate. And there's so many different ways to contribute, and so many of these things are devalued. And another line along which things are devalued in our society is also because of patriarchy too, not just capitalism, but patriarchy has devalued so much of the work that women do. Parenting is a great example because women have historically done more of the parenting, and it's decided that is not paid labor. That should not be paid labor. And I think and so a lot of times it's not valued the same way that having a career and a paid job is. But if you think about it, raising a child to become a good person and an adult that is like, a healthy mindset, good self-confidence, or good good education and good upbringing, to be a nice, kind person who cares with a big heart. Like all these things that you could do by being a good parent are so important. Like arguably helping a baby transform into like a human being who is quote unquote a good person, and I guess that's a big open discussion too, but like being a good parent is such a valuable thing. It's probably one of the most valuable things that you could do with your life. And to say that that doesn't get that's not paid, and then that a lot of times some people wouldn't even see that as valuable or something, which is wild, or like wouldn't acknowledge it as quote unquote doing something with your life. That's wild stuff. That's messed up. And it's also, it's because of patriarchy where they're trying to not give women power by giving them actual money for their labor. It's like, oh, well, that's something that women do, so we will make it not paid so that they have to still be dependent on their husbands for money or other stuff like that. So that's something to be aware of as well when thinking about certain types of doing something that might be devalued in our society as well. It seems like we're all doing something, right? And I don't know, the last thing I guess I want to just say is that maybe I think that there are ways to encourage people to do something, like encourage, especially when you got into specifics, right? Because you said quote, I'm often encouraging my friends to pursue their gifts and explore their interests. So that's like, a little bit, that's not like telling them to do something capitalistic or do something that is going to be acknowledged by society as valuable. You're really just telling them to do something that would be, those things are really rewarding for the individual too, of pursuing their gifts or exploring their interests. And I don't know the best way to word it and everything. I wish I had the perfect frame to give you so that when you said it, it would feel so right and it would be so validating and affirming and not, devaluing their life if they don't do it, but definitely encouraging them to do what they can do or what they want to do. Sometimes with these things, there's not a really perfect answer. Sometimes there's a really good frame you can find that makes just an issue make sense, and it makes it frames everything just right so that it's like, I see, everything fits together better now, I feel like that's the work of theory a lot of times. This is what I learned from Bell Hooks, I think specifically, is that she's like, theory is really what helps us put everything together in a way that makes sense, and that's coming up with these understandings of the world. And I don't think that's necessarily what I'm the best at doing myself. Sometimes it's not like my genius gift that I've been given, but sometimes when I hear a good thing, I can help tell other people too. But anyway, I don't really know the best way to word this. I think I would just try to express it all, everything that you feel. I would just say those things to your friends too. It's so hard to know what it's like to be somebody else. So I think just encouraging them and supporting them, maybe even offering what could I do to help you pursue this or something, and not blaming them or making them feel judged if they don't do something. I don't know. I think if you're aware of all these things that you're mentioning in your question, that your concerns will come across and your intention will come across probably good. But anyway, I don't know. That's my attempt at speaking to that question. Thank you for that question. Maybe that's a full episode there. And yeah, that's the end. Eat more whole plant foods if you can, and hail Satan if you want to. No pressure.